What up, everybody? This is the Ultimate Patriots / Dr. Football podcast. I am your host, Dr. Dennis Teehan, recording tonight remote from my real live medical office in Dedham, Massachusetts. All the patients are gone. The doors are closed. They're locked. And we're talking football. And what a weekend of football we have to talk about. Joining me, as always, from the Hedge Better studio in Braintree, Mass., the CEO of Hedge Better himself, Justin Fein. Justin, my man, what is going on? How are you, my brother, this evening?
You know what? I'm doing great. Another week in the books. The first week in the books, honestly, wasn't it so good to get football back, like real football? It's been so long. Like, it was such a breath of fresh air.
It was a terrific week of football.
It really was. Honestly, normally I feel like opening week disappoints more often than not, but I was so happy with the slate of games. I mean, it really just was so interesting. Tons of storylines and narratives to get into. I mean, it really set the table for an exciting season.
It did. And, you know, one thing I loved about this weekend is that the defenses across the league, like, played better, seemed to almost have the advantages over the offenses. For all the rule changes the NFL has done to give offense the advantage, I think this was the lowest total passing yards of any full slate in the NFL in a few years. They were saying, I love that. I love that the defenses were part of the game.
I do too. I mean, we've talked about it on this podcast. You know, some of these rule changes, it seems like they're trying to make it impossible for defenses to do their jobs. And it really was a defensive display this week. Now, obviously, you know, that could change over the coming weeks as the offenses settle in and people kind of get their footing. But it was nice, man. I like it. I love a good defensive battle. I mean, hey, one of my favorite Patriots Super Bowl was the one against the Rams. And that's the one everybody hates, right? Like, right. I love a good defensive battle. I can't get enough of it.
I agree 10,000%. And some of these games were like choppy at times, but I mean, they were all close. So many of them come down to the wire. It was just great entertainment. So like you said, it was terrific to have it back. For real, we have so many great things to talk about. We are going to talk a lot about what happened in Foxborough. Stunning upset of the Patriots beating the Bengals.
Yep.
Justin saw it coming, called it like 6 months ago when we did the schedule release show. And for a lot of the reasons, Justin, that you illustrated, if you go back to that like May episode we recorded, you kind of said things that actually proved to be 100% true. So you kind of nailed it. So we're going to get into all of that, what happened in Cincinnati with the Patriots. And then we're going to go around the league. We're kind of going to go game by game and just talk about some of these terrific games. You ready to get to it, my man?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. So open and take, kickoff to start, set the table for the rest of the podcast. I want to start with this, Justin. One game in the books in the Gerard Mayo era. And I can already tell you that based on what I saw this Sunday, that my concern level for Gerard Mayo and this coaching staff is already way, way down from where it was even just a few days ago, based on what happened on Sunday in Cincinnati. I can guarantee you there are going to be dark moments this year. You know, it's not always going to be as good as it was this week, but here's the thing. They came out, they looked like they were disciplined. They looked like they executed well. They played with passion and intensity. They handled situational football well. That was one of my big concerns because of the inexperience on this coaching staff. They looked, quite honestly, like a well-coached football team. They looked like, dare I say it, a Belichick team from 10 or 20 years ago. And, you know, just the whole way Gerard presented this summer and the way he handled the media, and he was sometimes all over the place, kind of rambled on. And I really was worried about what we were going to get from this guy this year.
Yeah.
But what he showed on Sunday, what this team showed on Sunday, what this coaching staff showed on Sunday is that they know how to coach a football team. They know how to execute. And let's face it, with the last 4 or 5 years of the Belichick era, how many times could we say that about the Patriots? How many times do we come in here and say they were undisciplined, they were sloppy, they weren't well prepared, they didn't play with any passion? So it looks like they made a big adjustment for the positive. And Justin, I feel a lot better about Gerard Mayo now than I did even a few days ago. Your thoughts, Justin, on Gerard Mayo's debut, your concern level, and where you are on Gerard Mayo right now?
You know, I think that's totally fair, everything you just said. And to kind of sum it all up into one phrase, right? This team looked like they were bought in. They look like they bought in on Gerard Mayo and this coaching staff. I mean, it was more evident than ever. And I think we all kind of knew coming into this that Gerard Mayo, one of the strengths that he potentially had was that he was going to be a very good players coach, right? But that's not necessary. It's easier said than done. And it really just looked like all the players on this roster were behind him. They were bought into what him and the rest of the coaches were putting down. I mean, you even just look at the end of the game, you know, they're dumping the Gatorade on him. He's got all the players coming up and giving him hugs and daps on the sideline. Like, everybody was so excited for him. And I think that was just a testament to the impact that he had. I mean, what's his name?
It says a lot about how this team feels about Mayo, and frankly, how they felt about Belichick. Because I think that was part of the emotional response there. Was like it just showed you that a lot of these guys were frustrated with what Belichick was doing.
Yeah, a million percent. And you know, to hear it from our quarterback's mouth, you know, that he cried 3 times on game day because of how inspirational Gerard Mayo was, right? Like, I think that really does kind of speak to the level of reach that he has in this locker room. And to your point, like, we saw all the things that we expected to see out of the Patriots for the last couple of years. They took care of the ball, very minimal penalties. Right. Their defense was flying around all over the place. It didn't look like they lost their 2 best defenders this year. It didn't look like they were running with a completely new personnel group on offense. You know what I mean? It didn't look like it was the first week of the season. Like, this team. How
about this one, Justin? Like, how many times in the last 4 years have we come in here and been like, I can't believe how awful their special teams is.
Special teams.
And their special teams was great this week. Lights like out. From the kicking to the kick coverage, it was like crisp, tight. It was a big difference in the game.
It was a big difference. It was a huge difference. I mean, you even talk about some of the plays that this team made. Now, look, I don't want to get, you know, too ahead of ourselves, right? Because in reality, you know, the Bengals had 2 touchdowns that were pretty much in their grasps, right? Like, they had that Mike Gesicki drop that should have been a catch. The backup tight end, Tanner Hudson, I mean, right as he was about to cross the goal line. And credit to Kyle Duggar. He didn't give up on the play. He got beat in the coverage. He got back into the play, knocked the ball up before it crossed the goal line. But
terrific play.
It was a terrific play. But to that point, right? Like, this was a team that last year in these games, there were 1 or 2 close plays. How many times can we count that decided the outcome of this game? And in this game,
honestly, you could say that for this last year, the year before, and the end of 2021 too, like the last 2.5 years.
Exactly. In the common theme over those last 2.5 years was that that 1 or 2 plays that wound up deciding the game always seemed to go against the Patriots. In this week, this year, the things were it just worked out for them. And, you know, you could call that luck, you can call that hustle, you can call that preparation, whatever. But it just seems to me like maybe this Patriots team has found a little bit of confidence with their new personnel and their new coaches. And it might be a fresh start in New England that we didn't know we needed.
Yeah, exactly. And you're right. I mean, like, if you really look at it, right, and I said this during the game, like, everything went right for them that needed to happen. Everything that needed to happen for them to win this game. It happened, and those key swing plays all went their way.
Yeah,
I mean, they could have easily lost this game. And, you know, as I was watching the game, Justin, I kept saying to my friends who I was watching with and texting with, I don't want another moral victory. I want them to actually win this game. But even if they had lost this game, I mean, the way they executed alone, I think, was just a huge, like, positive foundation for the rest of the season moving forward. They might lose a lot of games like this throughout the year this year when maybe they don't get quite as many breaks.
Yeah.
But they proved on Sunday that they can execute. Like, they can execute a snap, right? They're not going to make 13 penalties a game. You know, like that kind of stuff that we did see sometimes at the end of the Belichick era. This was a great start, and I hope it keeps up to show that Mayo knows what he's doing. Maybe we're all wrong all summer.
It's starting to kind of occur to me that maybe it was just a case of, you know, we were scared of something that was different that we weren't used to.
Totally.
Right. Like, we saw, it was kind of a culture shock to all of our systems as Patriots fans, seeing this massive turnover, seeing these Patriots without both Bill Belichick and Tom Brady for the first time since God knows when. And I think it was just a big culture shock. And we're seeing all these things happen differently, even just the coaching style, their attitude in the offseason, all that stuff. And I think it was a shock to everybody's system. I think it made us all nervous. The Patriot way that we knew was getting flipped upside down. But I think we're seeing now that it really maybe wasn't anything to be scared about. It was something to embrace and welcome.
Well, look, there's two sides to this. One is like, yeah, you're right. It was a little bit of afraid of something different. I mean, we still had a lot of confidence in Bill Belichick, as bad as things were the last 4 or 5 years. As much as I questioned him, as much as you questioned him, I think deep down inside, we still had a lot of confidence in him and his ability to at least coach on the field. Maybe we were overvaluing that a lot is kind of, I think, what you're saying. And maybe things had gotten a little worse than we realized. And the breath of fresh air to Mayo is a good thing. Agree with that. All that said, Mayo fed into a lot of the doubts and the speculation with the way he handled the media. And you know what? The two things don't correlate. Like Mayo could be really awful with the media and be a terrific football coach. That's certainly possible. But Mayo walked into all from day one, a lot of like the doubt and speculation around him all offseason with the way he said things and had a habit of just like firing off the hip, from we're going to burn some cash to, his comments about Drake May before they drafted him to, I mean, there was a lot of things this summer that we could go through them all that just like really engendered people to be like, does this guy really know what he's doing?
I agree. I felt the same way. I mean, I used the words cringy in our last episode, right? So like, both did, so I mean, like, it's definitely something that I think, had a lot of people looking at going, oh, I don't know. We're going to have to see how this works out. Doesn't give me high hopes. But to your point, it just goes to show that there really isn't as much of a correlation as we may like to think. Like, yeah, he may have made some mistakes with the media. Yeah, it might have been an interesting transition, even starting with that original press conference with him and Robert Kraft. Yeah. But I think what we're seeing is that it's had a positive impact in the locker room, a positive impact on the team. And we're seeing the results play out in front of our very eyes. I mean, look, we only got one game sample size, but it's enough. It's enough for me to at least be positive moving forward into the beginning of the season.
That's a good point. It is only one game, but I'll be honest, it was more than I expected. Oh yeah. I mean, I thought, and let's face it too, like we can't have this discussion without mentioning the fact that they didn't go out and beat the Carolina Panthers. I mean, the Cincinnati Bengals. Okay, yeah, they're notoriously slow starting team. They were your Super Bowl pick. Yep. You're in their stadium. Like that's a good football team, or we think is a good football team. It's funny because I told you last week that I like the Bengals to roll over the Patriots, but I'm going to tell you something that might surprise you. I took the Patriots on the money line on Sunday morning, and I'm going to tell you why my opinion changed, why I thought it was a good value play. And it's because T. Higgins was out. So we recorded on Tuesday, and I don't think Higgins was declared out until Friday. Exactly. Right? And then Jamar Chase, he was going to play, but he hadn't practiced the whole week. So it's like, what version of Jamar Chase are you getting? So when you look at who Burrow was going to be throwing to, coming off the surgery, slow starting team, I said, you know what? I'm going to take a flyer on the Pats. So I totally contradicted myself with what I actually put my money, okay? Yeah. And I did take the Pats on the money line.
No, and I love that. And I think too, when you look at it, I mean, all those factors, they really did make a difference, right? Like look, this is a Bengals team that I'm fully confident that by the end of the year, they'll find their groove. They'll be mixing it up. Yeah. They'll be in the playoff hunt, right? They'll be a much better team in a couple months now than what we saw on Sunday. But it doesn't mean you overlook this win. You went into Cincinnati Stadium. You went up against a good quarterback. You went up against a decent defense, a group of guys who've been together for a while. Yep. And you were the biggest underdog in the week, flat out. And
the biggest opening underdog to win outright in the NFL in like 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you know that?
Yeah. So I mean, look, with all that being said, I think you have to look at this you have to feel encouraged moving forward. I mean, I'm still not going to sit here and say, oh, this team is playoff bound. This team's a contender. I mean, it's way too early for that. But I'm sitting here now with a rejuvenated energy for the rest of this season. And not only that, but look, we talked last week about how, not having Drake May start seriously hindered the excitement for watching this team and seeing this season unfold. And I got to say, like, as much as I still want to see Drake May, I'm super excited to watch this team moving forward now after this opening week.
Yeah. Let's get to that because, but before we get to that, because I want to talk about the quarterback position, the quarterback decision, and I have a take that's going to probably be a little contrarian to I think what most people walked away from Sunday saying about the quarterback situation. But before I get to that, Justin, can we just talk very quickly about what Bill Belichick must be saying right now and how he must be feeling after watching the way that team went out and played when, let's face it, he couldn't get that Patriots team to look like that very much the last 4 or 5 years. What's Bill Belichick saying today about all this?
Well, I'm sure he's not saying much to anybody. I'm sure he's thinking, it. But it's funny because he did about a 40-minute.
On the Pat McAfee show.
I was just gonna say he did a 40-minute segment on the Pat McAfee show. Not one mention of the Patriots.
Crazy.
I'm sure he's a little salty. I would have to imagine that. And you know what? Like, I can't. It's you still can't speak to exactly why maybe this team gave up on Bill or why Bill lost a hold of this team at the end. I mean, we can speculate, but whatever it is, I think it was a very stark contrast. And we'd be crazy to think that Bill Belichick didn't take note of it. We'd be crazy to think that he didn't take that personally. And we'd be crazy to think that he's not using that as motivation to come back at some point and show that he still got it. Because that was, the headlines all over the internet, all over sports radio, was that this Patriots team looked like a Belichick team. They looked like, you know what I mean? And so
they did.
And they did. And so the fact that it took them, 4 years to look like a Belichick team again after Tom Brady leaves, like it's kind of damning on Bill Belichick.
It is. And I wonder, Justin, like if they do go out and win like 7, 8, 9 games this year and have a competitive season, how is that going to affect Belichick's like coaching prospects next year? Like it ends up being almost an indictment on what happened here with Belichick the last 2 years. Who wants to take a chance on like the 73-year-old guy who left a huge mess in New England and his replacement just came in and in 1 year doubled his win total or something like that? Like, it's going to be a huge indictment on Belichick.
It is. And I wonder if it's going to have an impact on where Belichick sets his sights or what organizations would be interested in having him. Because from what I'm seeing, right, like Bill Belichick has proven that he can take a good roster and perform with them, right? Like I think that's pretty evident over his 2+ decades here in New England. But what we haven't seen out of Bill Belichick either before he came to New England or in the last couple of years of him being at New England was his ability to kind of elevate a rebuilding program and take them from the ground up and win with them. And so you wonder if you say, hey, because you've been saying the Giants, right? The Giants, that's going to be where Bill lands. If I'm the Giants, do I look at that and say, oh, maybe this guy's not the guy we need to come in with a young rebuilding team?
Well, if you're the Maras or if you're Jeffrey Lurie, if you're Jerry Jones, right? I'm sorry. Like I'm looking right at that Gatorade bath and how like genuinely enthusiastic and excited those players were. And I almost, the first thing I thought of when I saw that is like, as much as it's a statement of enthusiasm for Belichick, it was like, I mean, for Mayo, it was almost like a statement about Bill Belichick too. And, like if you're one of those owners, you got to look at that and say, do I really want this guy coming into my room of young 23, 24, 25, 26-year-old guys, right? And taking over my program at this point? I think it's a fair concern.
I think it's a very fair concern. But you know what? Look, I've said this, since the beginning that I think Belichick, if he does coach again, or it sounds like when he coaches again, I think he's best suited for a program that is, ready to win now. I don't think he should go to a rebuild. I don't think he's equipped to go to a rebuild. And after this opening week, I think there's teams out there who probably doubt his ability to rebuild. So you know, if he does coach again, I hope to see him with a potential contender. But this opening week was definitely damning on Bill Belichick's ability to take a downtrodden team.
Totally damning to Belichick. Let's talk, Justin, a little about the quarterback position. And I want to give you what I think is a contrarian take on this. I've heard a few people say it, but I think most people are going the opposite way, because I think most people are looking at this win this weekend and they're seeing it as a validation of picking Jacoby Brissett as the starting quarterback. And I look at it as the complete opposite. And I'm going to give you a couple reasons why I think that what I saw on Sunday makes me feel even more strongly that Drake May should be the starting quarterback of this team very, very soon. Number one is the biggest concern we had for putting May on the sideline was that this team was such a mess, or it looked like such a mess. The offensive line was a mess. They couldn't execute. Well, I saw on Sunday, if nothing else, a representative football team executed well. I don't think the offensive line pass blocking was great, but it wasn't a total disaster. And the run blocking was actually, I think, pretty good at times. Why can't Drake May go out there with this team and have a process of development now? That's reason number one. Reason number two why they should go May is, I'm sorry, everything went right for them against the Bengals. They had almost the Patriots had almost no passing game. Their longest play was a 17-yard run. Brissett, his biggest impact was, I think, with his legs. Okay, he had 4 huge runs. They are not going to beat many teams, Justin, if they can't have some kind of offensive output passing game. And Jacoby Brissett, I'm sorry, I don't think he's the guy to do that. He really almost threw a huge interception that I think we'd be talking about a very different story today if Hunter Henry doesn't make a terrific play. So for those two reasons, Justin, I think I want to see Drake May sooner rather than later as the quarterback of this team. Your thoughts on the quarterback decision and what we're going to see moving forward?
Well, I guess to play devil's advocate a little bit, right?
Yep.
I look at that game and I totally agree. Jacoby didn't do anything amazing. His stats weren't that great. I didn't see anything that said, okay, this is the guy that should be starting for this football team, right? But here's what I will say. What Jacoby brought to the table was something that is still unproven with Drake May, and that was Jacoby's ability to come in as a veteran quarterback and play close to mistake-free football, right?
Yes.
I look at Drake May as Drake May's upside this past Sunday could have been much higher, but it also could have been much lower, because if there's one thing we know rookie quarterbacks tend to do, it's make rookie mistakes, right? And rookie mistakes would undoubtedly have cost this team the game on Sunday and totally changed the narrative coming out of week one, the trajectory coming out of week one. So I look at it and I say, okay, if there's one thing that we can hopefully continue to rely on Jacoby Brissett for, it's not to make these dumb rookie mistakes. The upside with Drake May might be much higher. I get it. We want to develop him. But I actually don't hate Jacoby starting this season off and just getting this team's mental right and getting them settled in, letting them understand that, hey, this is the team that, you know, if we play relatively mistake-free football, we're good enough to go out there and compete and win some games. So I see both sides of it, but I definitely see a world where rookie mistakes cost that team severely on Sunday.
Yeah, and let me be clear about this too. You know, if you start Drake May in this game, you might not have won this particular game, because just for the reason you alluded to, you look across the league and all the rookie quarterbacks that started were really struggled. All of them really struggled. So you put May out there, you very well could have lost this game. But I think the bigger picture is the development of Drake May and developing really what I would say the kind of passing game that you're really going to need to beat anyone in this league. And I feel like at this point, there's no reason for May to be sitting on the sideline. I will say, in all fairness, that I can understand from watching the game to what you just alluded to. I can understand why they started Brissett, because for all the things you just said, like he was heady, he was smart, he executed well. I wonder what we would be saying if he threw that interception. If Hunter Henry didn't make that play, we might be saying very different, because that was a bad throw and a big mistake, but it worked out. It was really the only mistake he made. I get why they went with Brissett, to be honest with you, but I just feel like at the end of the day, May is going to offer this team more long term.
And I agree. May will offer this team more long term. I go back to wondering if, hey, this was more of a let's get the team right? Like, let's build the team's confidence. Like, let's build the team's psyche. Let's go out there and start the season on a high note, a positive note. Validate the fact that all these guys believe in themselves, right? One thing was evidence that these guys believe in themselves and they believe in their ability to compete, right? And I just think it came down to the fact that he said, look, the best chance for us to walk away from week one with a win that kickstarts this season, puts this season on the right trajectory, and keeps these players engaged and bought in was to put the veteran quarterback out there. But I agree. In the long run, the best thing is to develop Drake May. I don't think that's a question.
I mean, I don't think they're going to win many games with Jacoby Brissett. I just think, look, this was a situation where everything went right. And the Bengals were still a disaster. How much of what we saw Sunday was about the Bengals being a disaster versus the Patriots doing their thing? I think that's another thing that we have to look at, is like the Bengals really, I mean, they were a mess on Sunday. Like they were flat. They didn't come to play. They didn't execute. I thought they were a disaster on Sunday.
For sure. I think the Bengals hurt themselves just as much as the Patriots helped themselves, like in all honesty. And I think that was pretty apparent that you weren't getting the best version of that Bengals team, not even close. But, going in and beating a quote unquote good team, especially a good team on paper, week one, like, I mean, you proved a lot. I think you proved a lot to the fans. You proved a lot to each other in that locker room. I mean, it's at the end of the day, I would love to see Drake May eventually take the helm of this team and kind of run with the momentum that's hopefully being built. But I just go back to the fact that in hindsight, looking at how things worked out week one, I think it was the right decision, what they ultimately wound up doing. Now, if we're in week 10, week 12 of this season, and Drake May is still riding the bench, then I'm going to be a little concerned. Definitely concerned.
Agreed. I still look at that week 5 game against Miami as the perfect time to bring him in, regardless of what happens over the next few weeks. I will say this: we're going to talk about Seattle in a little bit, but they're going to have much better passing game production, much better offensive output to beat that Seattle team. Geno Smith is a respected NFL quarterback. Okay, he's not Joe Montana, but he's going to hit some plays downfield. Even in Gillette, I think they're going to have to do better on offense. Justin, let's introduce a new segment to the show. I didn't even tell you about this. I'm totally springing on this on you by surprise. It's called First and 10. Okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give you like a few quick hit takes about the game, and we'll just kind of blast through them one by one. Now, it might not always be 10, because I don't want to be like, I only have 7. Right. And then I'm going to like throw 3 in just to get to 10. Or if I have 12, we're going to do 12. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to give you some quick hit takes. And you give me your thoughts. Okay.
All right.
First and 10. Ramondre Stevenson's workload. I mean, aren't you a little concerned? I mean, that was all hunky dory week 1. As the season goes on, is he going to be able to take the kind of pounding that he took this Sunday?
I don't know. I mean, look, everybody starts the season out fresh. He came into the season healthy, but we've seen him slowly deteriorate over the course of a season. This team really doesn't have any workhorse backs behind him. I mean, you got Antonio Gibson, you got some of these other guys that you can mix into the rotation, but it's going to be interesting to see if Ramondre can stay healthy, because there's very few workhorse backs left in the league. He's one of them at this point. And we've seen it. It's very tough to stay healthy for an entire season if you're a workhorse. Yeah.
And not to like be the cloud to the silver lining, but the other thing that was a huge swing in this game is that Ramondre Stevenson fumbled and the Patriots recovered and fumbled. And Stevenson does seemed to fumble the ball a fair amount. I think he had a huge fumble, if I remember correctly, the last time the Patriots and the Bengals played, which was Christmas Eve 2022. I think that's another concern. And whether it's injury, fumbles, whatever, there's not a lot of depth in this running back room. If he or Antonio Gibson, or when they go down, I mean, that's really going to affect him, because I don't know if Jermichael Hasty is going to be able to do the same thing that Stevenson is able to do. They don't have anyone, I think, behind them that's like a proven guy.
I agree. By the same token, I look at it and I say, look, you paid this guy, you signed him to a deal, you gave him his money, use him, run him into the ground, get as much out of him as you can.
Yeah. Yeah. You know? Well, that's what they're going to do. But I just hope, I mean, it's a brutal position, and you don't see many backs across the league getting like 25 carries anymore. A game 30 carries, and those days seem to be gone.
They are.
A lot of teams do it like, say, the Miami Dolphins do. They got like 3 or 4 guys. They're sharing the wealth. This roster isn't built that way. So we'll see if that becomes a problem as the year goes on. Okay, offensive line, I hit on this a little earlier, but I mean, didn't you think that the offensive line kind of exceeded your expectations? I will say one thing. They did not have to throw at any point in this game. You go down by like 21-3 or 21-10, and you're in a position you have to throw. It might look a lot worse, but I thought the offensive line, in particular the pass blocking, wasn't that bad.
No, it wasn't that bad. I wouldn't say it was particularly great, but I think but
5 out of 10.
Right. But that's I'd give it 10. Yeah, I'd give it a 5 out of 10, maybe even a 6 if I'm being generous. But I look at it and I say that very much exceeds the expectations that we've had all off season. So I was
expecting like a 1 or a 2 out of 10. Like I was expecting Jacoby Brissett to get like broken in half.
Exactly. We said it might be a liability for any of the quarterbacks that we have back there. And it looks like, hey, it's at least going to be passable.
At least going to be passable. That was super encouraging. And don't forget too, they yanked Chukwuesekora for. He started the game as the tackle. Yeah. And then they put in Valerian Lowe to replace him, because I guess he started tough. The other thing that's noteworthy, City So didn't play. He is a good player. And they started Owen at right tackle, which begrudgingly I think it is the right move, because you don't have any other tackles. So overall, I think you'd have to say you're happy with this offensive line.
Yeah, still a lot of work to be done. But I mean, hey, I'm very happy coming out of week 1 with what I saw.
Okay, how about this? Joe Burrow is still not right. I mean, I think that was abundantly evident from watching. He is not throwing the ball like he used to. And I mean, Burrow he's not Josh Allen or Mahomes or something like that, but he's a live armed guy. I felt like a couple of his passes, they just didn't look like they had any pop or zip to them. Didn't really hit anything downfield. That might have something to do with Jamar Chase not being game ready yet, and the guys he was throwing to. I just didn't feel like – I feel like Burrow's wrist is still an issue.
It definitely could be. I mean, look, I've heard conflicting opinions. I've heard his injury is something that's going to always continue to linger. That never will fully heal. I've heard that he's fine and that he's back to normal. I mean, it's tough right now because this team has a track record of starting the season off slow. And like you just alluded to, right? Jamar Chase hasn't practiced pretty much almost all off season. T. Higgins was a surprise, injury, for Sunday. So this team went into it essentially without one of their top options, the other one at half speed, and they're notoriously known for starting slow, and Burrow's still getting back from injury. I'm not super worried yet in the long term, but something didn't look right. Whether it was the injury lingering, whether it was just because it was week 1 and this team starts slow because they didn't have some of their weapons, definitely didn't look right. But again, I will say too, just like I mentioned earlier, this team the Bengals were 2 mistakes away from Joe Burrow having 2 passing touchdowns and then probably winning the game, right? So it is kind of a circumstantial, I think, evaluation, but something didn't look right for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I heard a lot of those same whispers this offseason as well about that injury being more of a longer term thing. And when he comes out and he plays like that in the opening game, you can't help but raise your eyebrows a little and be like, what's going on with this guy? Is he really right? Okay, next one. Bengals, the take as well. The Bengals need to pay T. Higgins and Jamar Chase like immediately, ASAP, because that team has absolutely nothing anymore on offense besides those 2 guys. And you saw that offense was kind of feckless without I would say either. I mean, Chase was out there. He was clearly not the same player Higgins did not even suit up for quote unquote personal illness, which I think we all know what that's about. They got to pay those guys because and I know Higgins has been on the trade block, I feel like, for 2 years, but they got to stop screwing around and just give those guys their money.
I mean, I agree. Look, you got a window right now where you got this group of guys together, and look, T. Higgins and Jamar Chase are good receivers. I don't think there's any doubt Jamar Chase will get a contract, but you look at the product in the field from this Sunday, Jamar Chase without a contract, he might as well have just phoned it in. I mean, that guy did not want to be out there. He was playing at 60% speed. You can tell he just was not bought into that game at all. And you got to pay the guy sooner rather than later. And you're right. I think if they were smart, I think they should give T. Higgins a contract too. I mean, this is the same offensive nucleus that took you to a Super Bowl, almost took you back to a second one. I think they'd be dumb to just move on.
If they trade T. Higgins, teams are going to just put a bullseye on Jamar Chase. And I think that is really going to affect that offense.
Yeah. So look, I do like a couple of the young guys they got on that team. Like they drafted that Jermaine Burton kid out of Oklahoma. I think he'll be good in the long run. But like, you look at it rookie wide receivers don't usually just come up, especially rookie wide receivers that aren't drafted in the first or second round, right? Like guys that come a little later in the draft, like they'll take a little bit of time to get up to speed. If you plan on starting this season, with a limited Jamar Chase and a bunch of young kids trying to fill that number 2 role, I think it's, you're going to go from bad to worse.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think when you look for the future of that team, I mean, don't forget that team is one wide receiver injury away from probably having some major problems moving the ball, even in spite of having Joe Burrow.
Yep.
Okay, next one. What a slap in the face it would have been if Mike Gesicki had made that catch. I mean, oh my God, this guy was such a disappointment in Foxborough and like a total bum when he was here. And then for a few brief seconds there, we all thought he made this like great, amazing touchdown catch at like a huge point in the game. It would have driven me so crazy if he had done that. And it was like such a typical thing that he wasn't able to make that play. I was like, that's the Mike Gesicki we know and love.
Well, you know what I got to say, it was bittersweet for me because that drop was the reason why I lost out in a $400 parlay. He was my only leg that didn't hit to win.
What did you hit? What did you take?
I took Mike Evans anytime touchdown, Tyreek Hill anytime touchdown, Gesicki anytime touchdown. And one other guy, he was the only one who didn't hit. But
my God!
And so little tough. But to your point, right? Like it would have been. It's always tough seeing a guy leave your team that didn't perform up to standards and then going somewhere else and excelling. So I mean, it was a bittersweet moment. It was nice to not get that rubbed in your face. Would have liked to win the bet, but all things aside, I look at it and I say, okay. Thankfully, that was one of the reasons we won the game, and it didn't add salt to the wound of letting him go and seeing him, perform.
All right, next one. Okay, there is no way in 10,000 years that Chad Ryland makes all 3 of those kicks. Right,
no.
Like bringing in Joey Sly. I know he's not a great kicker. You got to give him a lot of credit for nailing 3 kicks.
Yep,
all 3 of them huge in a game like that. No way. They probably don't win that game if Chad Ryland is the kicker.
You drafted a guy. They made a quick decision to move on from him, brought in a veteran. And the veteran presence helped. Like you got a guy, he might not have the best leg in the league, but he's not shaky. Yeah. He can go in.
He's a professional.
He's a professional. Exactly. He's been in the league. He can go in. He can make kicks that he needs to make. He's definitely more reliable than Chad Ryland. And you know what? At the end of the day, I'm fine with his leg not being as big if it means that he's going to make more of his opportunities and be more reliable.
Absolutely. I mean, let's face it, right? In 21 and 22, in 20, Nick Folk was like possibly the Patriots' best offensive weapon. Yes. Just the fact that he was a reliable guy. He wasn't going to kick a 58-yard field goal, but you could count him to pick pretty much anything under like 47, 48 yards, automatic. And that was a huge weapon for them. The decision to move on from him last year was a terrible decision. Chad Ryland was a disaster. And I think having a stable veteran kicker is absolutely going to be huge for this team because they're going to be in a lot of close games like this.
Agreed. Totally agree.
Okay, Justin. How about this one? Keon White. We got to talk about him. Breakout game, right? 2.5 sacks. I mean, the guy's a stud.
Absolutely. And we saw, look, when this guy got drafted, we said this might be a diamond in the rough. He fell to them.
Yep.
He was a projected first round talent, fell to them in the third round, I believe, right? Because he had, attitude issues.
Second round. End of the second round.
End of the second round. That's what it was. Yep.
Only guy I've ever seen that was that pissed when he got drafted. Like, didn't even feign or fake a smile.
I know. But you know what? He's got that mean edge to him on the field too. I saw he's in good company. He ranked in the top 5 in PFF's pass rushes this weekend with the likes of guys like TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, all the big dogs, right? So it's super encouraging, especially, we've talked about it. You lose Matthew Judon, you lose Christian Barmore. And that has a ripple effect all throughout this defense, right? If your front seven can't get after the quarterback and can't bring the pressure up front, everybody in the field suffers. So having somebody like Keon White step up and perform the way he did, super encouraging.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It will be interesting to see if he keeps it up, but obviously a huge thing if he can come in and sort of fill Matt Judon's shoes and maybe even, who knows, maybe fill them even better than Judon did.
Yep.
And then last one, Justin, then we're going to move on to around the league. Does what happened on Sunday in Cincinnati change your expectations for this team?
It does a little bit, because I was coming into this saying, well, let me take a step back. First off, I kind of, I feel like I've been saying I think this team is a little better than people have been giving them credit for. Right. And so I did expect this team to be able to win 5 or 6. You did,
but you were having some doubts, I think, as the training camp went on too, though.
I was having doubts, but I still think basically what I'm getting at is I still think this is a team that I expect to be able to win more than 4.5 games. Right. And I look at it, if anything, I say, okay, it changed my expectation in the sense that it's less about how many wins I think they'll get now, and more so about their ability to compete. Like, there were a ton of games on this schedule that I figured we could just write it off, right? And now I at least look at it and say, okay, we can be in for some competitive football this year. So my expectations for the win total hasn't really shifted that much, but my expectations in terms of this team's ability to compete and have watchable good games, that's definitely changed.
Well, let me answer this question, and I will be unequivocal. Does this game change my expectation level for this team? Absolutely, 110% yes. Now I look at the schedule and I see there are a couple games that I would still say are games that they're probably not going to, have much of a chance in. You're looking at San Francisco, at Buffalo,
right?
A couple others like that. But if you can go into Cincinnati and you can beat Cincinnati and play the way they played, the way this defense looked, I think it opens the door for them to at least be competitive in a lot more of these games. And I'm going to throw one other more factor into this. We're going to get into this around the league. But I also look at the way the Jets showed last night, and I'm like, okay, it's only week 1. But all of a sudden, those games don't look so unattainable. That week 3 game in the Meadowlands that I think we both chalked up to a clear L, a game that we didn't think they could win. I mean, come on. You have to feel differently about that game. Tennessee, Chicago, Indianapolis, Jacksonville, even Miami and Foxborough. I mean, these are games that might not have felt good about last week, but I think right now you look at them very differently. Will they win all of them? No, but I think that I'm looking more towards a 6 to 8 win team maybe now, and having some hopes that yes, maybe we will actually have a real season, and who knows, maybe even linger in contention into November, Thanksgiving, early December.
Exactly. Look, if you had told me, and I'm not saying this is likely, I still think it's still, probably a long shot, but if you had told me that this team could potentially be 3-0 to start the season, this team, right, it wouldn't have even been something that I probably would have entertained. But now, even though, like I said, it's not likely, it's definitely within the realm of possibility. You bring Seattle in next weekend. I look at that now as a tough game, but a potentially winnable game. You go to the Meadowlands in week 3. I look at that as a tough game, but a potentially winnable game. So it's definitely changing my expectations in terms of the fact that I could see them winning and competing in some of these games now that I just didn't have the expectation before.
I mean, this is a very quote unquote winnable game this week against Seattle, and forget 3-0. Like, how about 2-0?
Yeah.
Like, who in the world had Patriots at 2-0 on their NFL bingo card?
Nobody.
No one. So it's very realistic. And to be honest, like, I think Seattle still wins this week, but it's very realistic that the Patriots could be sitting next Sunday evening and be 2-0.
Yeah.
And no one, and I mean no one, thought that. And wouldn't that just be like amazing? And then you really have to, say, look, yeah, we're going to have at least a competitive season.
Yes, exactly. So, no, looking forward to it.
All right, brother. You ready to go around the league?
Let's do it.
Let's go game by game. Let's just go quick hit, game by game. Start with the first. If you have anything to say, move to the last. Ravens Chiefs, first game, Thursday night. Excellent game to start the year. My take home from this game, Justin, is like Lamar Jackson, right? You got a little window maybe into why he doesn't win in the playoffs. As much as I love him as a player, he missed the throw. He missed that huge throw to Zay Flowers.
Yeah.
Flowers wide open over the middle. You got to hit that throw. The throw before that was a tougher throw to the tight end early. That was still a makeable throw. He threw that one into the stands.
Exactly.
I don't know if I consider this Ravens team a contender yet. It's early. Okay, yes. But I thought that, Lamar Jackson didn't show well in the first game.
No, I didn't think it was a particularly good game for him. He did look, there were tons of comments about the fact that he looked a little skinnier and leaner and a little faster, and he had some of his mobility back. But like at the end of the day, it was still the same old Lamar Jackson, like missing some big opportunities, coming up short in a big game. Like that's what we've grown used to with Lamar Jackson. My takeaway from that game, it's less about the Ravens and it's more so about the Chiefs, man. Like I think the Chiefs just showed us that for anybody who was expecting them to maybe, come out with a slow start or that, this was going to be the year that things maybe took a turn for the worst, or this was things were changing. That's out the window. This is still, I think, the best team in the AFC. Mahomes showed that he's a winner. He's a champion for a reason. They're young guys. This is a team that, the Chiefs have used a rotation of receivers over the year because they haven't had a stable core of guys. You look at Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy, and I say, wow, this team may have found their two, their number one or their number two options, guys that they can stick with. This is potentially a better offense than last year with the capabilities of being pretty much the same exact defense. They
lost the Pro Bowl corner Snead too, and that's a big loss. But when you've got Pat Mahomes and you've got the kind of weapons they have, and I think the defense is still going to be good. You're right. The Chiefs are just like, right now, they're looking very much like a contender for the three-peat.
They are. And I've always thought L'Jarius Sneed's a little bit overrated. I think he was a little bit overrated before he got to the Chiefs. I think he was a little bit overrated on the Chiefs. Still a good cornerback. But ultimately, I look at this Chiefs team and I say, this is still the top contender in the AFC. And it's going to be another tall task to take them out this year.
All right, let's go to Packers-Eagles Brazil game, which was crazy. I have a theory about this game I want to run by you. The reason this game was on a Friday night, I think, is because if anything went crazy wrong in Brazil, in terms of pulling this game off logistically, they could play the game on Sunday or Monday back in the States. So that's my conspiracy theory. Why put a game on Friday night? That's why.
Yeah, and I don't doubt that. You heard mumblings from some of the players that didn't even want to go down there. You know what I mean? So a lot of the players didn't want to be there. You saw there were definitely problems with the fields, right? Guys were slipping all over the place in the first half. It was almost an injury hazard.
It was a wicked sloppy game. It was super sloppy game. The other thing, to talk a little bit about what was on the field. Look, Eagles won. Great win for the Eagles against a good Packers team. Jalen Hurts still had a couple of terrible turnovers. I'm really curious what we're going to see from that Philadelphia team. And as much as I think they are maybe the second most talented team in the NFC, I would not call them the second best team in the NFC right now, because there seems to be division in that locker room. Hurts and Sirianni still don't look like they're on the same page. And I don't think Jalen Hurts is the first things that plagued him last year yet.
Yeah, it definitely was a positive sign, I guess, to see the Eagles come out and compete and ultimately win the game. But it goes to show you that the Eagles are, as they proved to be last season, a very flawed team. I think this is a team that, like you said, they're having issues with coaches. They're having issues with personnel, with leadership in that locker room. Real shame to see Jordan Love go down like that. I know it's salvageable. He'll be back, but that's something that's going to linger with him the rest of the season. He's not going to come back in 4 or 5 weeks and be 100%. So that's a tough blow.
Well, yeah. Plus, I mean, his game is at least. I mean, he's a terrific pocket passer, but he uses mobility, and it's like he's not like he's a straight drop back passer like Brady, where
Right.
His legs are maybe less important. Like Jordan Love, mobility, he needs it. So
Right.
if he's not 100%, it could be one of those things that dogs him all year. Okay, let's go to Panthers Saints. This game was an absolute drubbing. Saints 47, Panthers 10. I mean, look, I don't think the Saints are really that good. I think the Panthers are potentially really that bad.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you say about Bryce Young? I mean, he looks awful.
He looks awful. I think the both of us said it going into his rookie year that it was a mistake for him to go number 1 overall. And then everybody, the media and the hype machine that's out there wanted to try to play it off as like, oh, year 2, Bryce Young, he's going to take a big step forward. Look at all the weapons they got for him. They're bringing in Dave Canales, yada, yada, yada.
Yep.
That was one of the worst performances I've seen by a quarterback in a team in a long time. Like, they have nothing encouraging.
Nothing. And it's not, in my opinion, just a thing where, there's no talent on that Carolina team. It's true that there isn't a ton of talent, but you just don't see anything from Bryce Young. And I just look at not only the decision to pass on CJ Stroud, but how about the fact they had Baker Mayfield in there at some point? And that guy has gone on, and he's having a terrific run now in Tampa Bay through 4 touchdown passes Sunday. They could have kept him, right, and drafted a player with that number 1 pick, and that would have made a big difference for the trajectory of that franchise. Right now, they are, I think they're right up there with anyone else as a likely candidate for that number 1 pick. And it looks like Bryce Young is just a total non-starter.
Agreed, 100%.
And you can pull our podcast if anyone wants to go back to May of 2023 and listen to the post-draft podcast we did. We both said it right at the time, all summer long, all throughout that whole season last year.
Yep.
We're like, what is so special about Bryce Young that makes him the number 1 pick?
I don't know. Couldn't tell you.
Couldn't tell you, right?
Yeah.
All right, Vikings-Giants. I think this is an interesting game. Vikings crushed the Giants in the Meadowlands. Wow. The Giants, are the Giants tanking for Bill Belichick in the number 1 pick? I mean, you have to wonder, how do you roll into this year with Daniel Jones again?
I mean, the only other team that was more pathetic than the Giants was the Panthers. And actually, I saw something funny on the internet because I think those 2 teams are playing this weekend in Germany, and I saw something that said this is Germany's last punishment for World War II, getting the Giants and the Panthers. But no, look, the Giants are obviously a dumpster fire. I think we have said Daniel Jones is a bad quarterback for so long. And not just us. I feel like it's everyone is all over the fact that Daniel Jones is an awful quarterback. And they turn around and they give him a giant contract. I think the glimpse that we got into them on was it Hard Knocks or whatever it was that this offseason, this is an organization that really just seems incompetent. They made all the wrong decisions. And it just seems like that team is totally heading in the wrong direction. Brian Dable's first year there, they looked pretty good. They surprised people. And ever since then, they've just regressed and fallen apart slowly. And now I just think they are just unwatchable.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I mean, that interception that Daniel Jones threw on the screen pass, that's an extra level of suck to that. That's that's like a Mac Jones-esque, psychological, implosion type level of suck, where it's not even a physical thing. You just aren't seeing the game, and you're just totally out of your skin rattled, and you're just throwing passes where they shouldn't be. Exactly.
No, Daniel Jones is mentally defeated. I think we can say that confidently. Yep. This guy's psyche is crushed.
Totally crushed. Okay, let's move on next. Steelers at Falcons. That was a boring ass game. I don't know if you watched any of that. The red zone went to it a few times. The Steelers scored all their points on field goals.
Yeah.
And I think there's a couple of take homes from this game. One is I underestimated how good the Steelers defense is. Yeah. I think we all did. I mean, they're good. And look, I think there are major problems on that offense. I think the quarterback is a major problem, but that defense is the real deal. And all we heard all offseason was about Atlanta's offense and the weapons and Kirk Cousins and blah, blah, blah. And they just completely, literally shut them down. That was an impressive performance for the Steelers.
Super impressive. I mean, look, that's a team that, at every level of that defense, they have stars. Like that is a well-built team. That's a team that is going to find a way to compete and stay in games and win games that they only put up 10, 15, 20 points in, because that defense is just so good. Part of that too, I think, is Atlanta and Kirk Cousins. You texted me over the weekend, talented losers holding true, right? Like across the board. Like Kirk Cousins, we've said it. He's a talented loser. That Atlanta team is talented, but Kirk Cousins, it's very apparent that he's coming off of an Achilles injury. Like he looked like he looked like he didn't have use of his legs while he was playing. I mean, it was not an encouraging performance for the Dirty Birds.
And let me say this: I don't know if you looked at the schedule, but Atlanta is going to Philadelphia on Monday night this week, Monday Night Football. So these are the kind of games that Kirk Cousins has been losing his whole career. So you're moving to an 0-2 start, most likely, if you're the Atlanta Falcons. And it's like, when did the calls from Michael Penix start? But,
exactly. Look, if this Atlanta team is 1-3, 0-4, 1-5, something like that, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked at all to see Michael Penix out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to start hearing those calls sooner rather than later if that team does not get off to a good start. And like I said, it looks like 0-2 is all but a virtual certainty, unless all of a sudden Kirk Cousins undergoes a dramatic shift in like who he is and what he's been for the last 8 years.
Is this
not likely to happen? Is
this like the new Russell Wilson Denver Broncos situation?
Right. It's a good call.
Honestly,
it's a great call.
It's not. I don't think it's that hard to make that call at this point. You paid the guy a boatload of money. You got a talented team that seemed to be a quarterback away from competing, and this guy just came in and crapped all over himself week one. It's tough to see a road where he just completely turns it around. But I mean, hey, it's only 1 week, but yeah, it's looking like that could be a awful signing from the Falcons.
Awful signing, and all the more reason why it made sense for them to draft Michael Penix, because if it blows up in their face, the one thing that will distinguish them from Denver with Russell Wilson is they already brought the next guy in, and that's a huge head start if Kirk Cousins does implode over the next few weeks. Okay, Texans Colts. I don't have a lot to say about that game. Good competitive game. Anthony Richardson is an exciting player. I don't think that necessarily means he's a great player. Jameis Winston was an exciting player, right? I mean, that pass Anthony Richardson threw, the 65-yarder, that's as good a pass I've ever seen in a pro football game. But he also made a lot of bad plays. And I don't know, I think that it's going to be exciting to watch. And what a rivalry with the Texans the Colts might have between Richardson and Stroud for the years to come.
Agreed. I think we saw two tough, hard-nosed teams battle it out. And look, I think the Colts are a good team. I think the Texans are a very good team. And I think that's what we saw. We saw two good teams battle it out, and the team with this better quarterback came out on top. But those are two good defenses. Those are two teams with weapons. Those are two teams that have exciting quarterbacks. I expect to see a lot from the Texans this season. I expect to see a good amount from the Colts too. I think, like you said, Anthony Richardson may not be the most talented quarterback, but he's definitely excited, and he definitely has the ability to make some big plays and keep that team competitive and winning some games.
And you didn't even mention the star of that game, who's Joe Mixon, who came in and was a total stud in that first game. And I drafted him in I want to say the fifth round or fourth, maybe fourth round of my fantasy draft. As my RB1, mind you. And, he had a huge game, and I just think he's well positioned with all the talent on that Houston offense, I mean, they're going to score points, and Mixon is in a good situation now. Okay, Cardinals, Bills. Not to bore everyone with another fantasy take, but I did draft Marvin Harrison in my second round pick, which looks like a really friggin' stupid thing to do today. He had 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, not catches, 4 yards, 1 catch. I will say Kyler Murray did miss him wide open for what would have been a game-winning touchdown. But, oh, man, tough start for those of us that put our faith in Marvin Harrison.
It is funny, too, because if you told me that Marvin Harrison had a tough start like that, I would sit there and I would assume that the Cardinals offense looked awful. They couldn't get anything going. Kyler sucked, but like Cardinals offense looked pretty good. Like he just like wasn't a big part of it. So
Murray wasn't even looking at Marvin Harrison for some reason.
Yeah. And who knows? I mean, maybe if we go back and watch tape, like maybe that was the Bills' MO. Like maybe he was double covered. Maybe they figured you take Marvin Harrison out. And that's kind of the game plan. But regardless of what it was, he did not look that good. Yeah, he had some opportunities where Kyler missed him. But overall, it's definitely not a good sign to see the Cardinals offense looking pretty good and him not being a part of it at all.
Well, you have to wonder after a game like that, like, is that what it's going to be like all year? Is he going to draw the double team and they're going to be going to Christian Kirk or whoever else instead?
Right. TBD. But the Cardinals did show me a little bit. I think we all I think we both expected that.
They covered.
They did cover. They covered. Actually, I actually did a parlay of the Cardinals, Steelers, and Patriots to all cover. So
that's great.
So, but you know what? Because I think the two of us were a little higher in the Cardinals than a lot of people were coming into the season. And they looked like they could be a competitive team this year.
They did, and I want to give you one other take on this game from the other side. And I think I do think the Cardinals are a good team. I think we have underestimated, just as like a general football viewing public, the greatness of Josh Allen. And I really think that you saw a little bit on Sunday, Josh Allen against a pretty good Arizona team, willing that team to victory. And I think you're going to see a lot of that this year. I know you don't like the Bills. I know you're low on the Bills, but I'm just saying, don't underestimate Josh Allen. He is that good.
I'm still conflicted on Josh Allen. I get it. He's talented. But I need to see him do that when it counts. I'm sick of seeing him do that against the Cardinals or in some regular season game. Like, do it when it matters. I've yet to see that from him. I want to see him do that against Kansas City in the playoffs or the Bengals in the playoffs. Like, that's what I'm waiting to see. But yeah, he did come on strong. He's clearly showing why he's one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. Again, I'm a little lower on him than most people. I'm a little lower on the Bills than most people. But that was a good wake-up call for them. I think.
What did you think about? Did you hear Josh Allen after the game say that he's never played with a wide receiver with Keon Coleman's skill set before? I thought that was a pretty huge swipe at Stephon Diggs.
It was a huge swipe, especially where, Keon Coleman looked okay, but he didn't look.
Yeah, like 4 catches or something like that.
He didn't look. There was nothing that prompted that comment other than spite. I think
he was probably sitting on that comment like the whole preseason, just waiting to drop that bomb. As soon as he had the chance.
Exactly. So yeah, it goes to show you where his head's at. I mean, he probably feels a little slighted by that whole Diggs situation. But look, I think that Bills team that was a good win for him, especially coming back at home on opening week. But again, I think this team's going to find themselves in some tough games. I think they're going to have a couple bad losses this year.
It'll be interesting to see. All right, next game, Titans-Bears. This is a sneaky, interesting game for a couple of reasons. First of all, let me say this. The Titans were my bet of the week. I love them because I'm so bullish on Caleb Williams. And that's not even long-term, I'm bullish on him too. But I just think rookie quarterback first game, favorite. I'm sorry. I'm going to bet against that. The Titans barfed this game away in a fashion that you have rarely seen in the history of the NFL.
Yeah.
Okay, a blocked punt, probably the worst pass I've ever seen. If you thought Mac Jones had some awful passes last year, go look at what Will Levis did. That was the worst, most ill-advised pass potentially I've ever seen in an NFL game. They also turned the ball over 2 more times. Levis fumbled and threw another interception. So it was awful. All the Titans had to do, like their coach said, was punt the ball on first down, and they probably would have won that game.
Seriously, yeah. I think it's good for the league that Chicago winds up winning that game, right? Like, I want to see Chicago be good. But by the same token, like, I really don't like Caleb. I like Caleb Williams, the player. I don't like Caleb Williams, the person. That's my thing. So
how about Caleb Williams, the hype machine?
The hype machine. That's
kind of what I'm against.
But that's when I say against him as a person, that's what I mean, right? I'm against his attitude and his antics and the way he comes off and the way he speaks to the media and
or just the way he's been ordained. Like, exactly. I mean, what did he do on the field Sunday to make you say, "Oh wow, this guy, he's not there yet, but he's really going to be a great player"?
Nothing.
He was more of a liability than anything.
He was 100%. That defense totally carried them. I mean, Caleb Williams had zero touchdowns. So it was interesting, especially too, because I think Will Levis he's like the forgot about guy, I feel like, in the NFL.
Oh, yeah.
Like nobody
sometimes it's better to be forgotten about, Justin, for the record.
For sure. But this was a big opportunity for him to come out and make a statement week one.
Oh, yeah. He made a statement, all right.
He made the wrong statement.
That he'll be selling mayonnaise before he's, before you know it, because that was awful quarterback play from Will Levis. Just awful. Okay, let's move on to the Jaguars-Dolphins. Again, the talented loser text I sent you, it was really with Trevor Lawrence in mind.
Yep.
Getting off to a 14-0 lead and then just being totally stagnant for the final 3 quarters of this game. Trevor Lawrence loses again. If you're wondering if you're keeping score at home, he now moves 1 full game further away from having the best winning percentage as a starting quarterback on his own roster.
Yeah.
Mac Jones still holds that title. What can you say about Trevor Lawrence? I mean, another bad loss.
The guy is just a loser. Look, the easiest bet I made this whole weekend was sprinkling a little bit on the Dolphins money line when they were down 14-0. That was the easiest bet all weekend, because
I did that on DraftKings too.
Yeah,
I 100%. I put $75 on the Dolphins money line, so they're going to come back and win that game.
Absolutely. And isn't it funny how it was very apparent to a lot of us watching that this Jaguars team is they're just fraudulent. I love Doug Peterson. I love some of the guys on that Jaguars roster, but Trevor Lawrence is not that dude. He's not. He is a talented loser. A very it's just so apparent. Blowing that 14-point lead was just it was just par for the course with Trevor Lawrence.
I mean, I'm watching the red zone in the first quarter of that game, and the way Lawrence was throwing the ball, and I'm like, man, he is going to make me eat these words this year. He's going to throws a touchdown to Thomas. He's got talented players around him, Evan Ingram, a couple other good receivers. I'm like, he is going to make me eat that take. And then he just went true to form, as always, and barfed the game away.
Exactly. And that's not going to be the last time we see that from Trevor Lawrence. But my favorite thing is no matter how many times he does this, no matter how many times he comes up short, we still have to listen to the talk that he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He's got all this talent. He's this, he's that. When is everybody else going to realize? I don't understand why there just seems to be blinders on with most of the media in this guy. It's crazy.
He's 4 years into his career, Justin.
Yeah.
4 years. This is 4th year.
Exactly.
So it's put up or shut up time, but I'm skeptical that he'll put up in the way that people expect him to. And by the way, I'm not saying he's the worst quarterback in the league.
Right.
I'd probably put him around 15, 17, 20, something like that. It's the hype machine that drives me crazy. He's the anointed one when he's never actually earned it. That's where I have a problem with Trevor Lawrence.
Agreed.
Raiders, Chargers, boring game. I'm going to tell you the only reason I found this game interesting is because our cousin, Jim, knockout pool, he asked me who to take. I told him the Chargers, and then they were losing. The game was close. I was nervous. I thought I derailed his knockout pool. Thank God Gus Edwards came through in the second half, and the Raiders were the Raiders, and the Chargers were able to steal that game. There's not much to say about it, I guess.
There really isn't. It was a boring game. The one thing I'll say is, what was Antonio Pierce thinking punting that ball away? That was something that you're used to seeing the Brandon Staley Chargers doing, right? So like it's kind of funny to obviously, now that they got Harbaugh, they got a good coach, all that stuff. But like that's the mistake that we used to see the Chargers make. And now we're seeing Antonio Pierce do that against the Chargers. Like that ultimately, I think, cost them the game. It really did.
It was a very, very foolish decision. And it was like, I mean, in a sense, I liked it because it was like against the analytics. But all the analytics would say you go for that right there. And I kind of dug that Antonio Pierce gave a giant like middle finger to all the analytics and the stat geeks, but it was definitely the wrong decision. So I mean, he'd enjoy his moment there where he bucked the trend, but
right.
It didn't really work out. My other take on this game, very quickly, we talked about this last week. Curious what Justin Herbert is going to look like in the Jim Harbaugh offense. I thought Herbert looked terrible, and he was terrible in this game. So we'll see what happens with him the next few weeks.
He's another guy that I'm very close to anointing into the talented loser club.
Oh, he's in my talented loser club. Yeah. In fact, when I sent you that text, he was losing. So it was Lawrence had blown the lead. I mean, I think Lawrence had just lost. Maybe Herbert was sucking. So All right. Let's go Cowboys Browns. Look, the Cleveland Browns have a major problem on their hands with Deshaun Watson, who, by the way, got sued again yesterday. I just can't believe how bad this decision gets. We've been talking about it for 3 years. When they first did it, we both panned it, said it was a mistake. Go back and pull the tapes. It gets worse and worse for them. Deshaun Watson doesn't look like he belongs on an NFL field. If I'm the Cleveland Browns, I have a hard time convincing myself my team is in a better team with Jameis Winston as my starting quarterback.
I agree. So I had heard a rumor, and this is kind of interesting. I don't know if it's true, but something that I heard that was that one of the reasons why Deshaun Watson looked so good in Houston when he was there is because Houston was willing to run the Clemson offense, and that when he went to Cleveland, they said no, we're not doing that, right? So I wonder how true that is. But to your point, Deshaun Watson has looked awful in a Browns uniform. He looked awful the other day. And isn't it the most Browns thing ever? You spend decades trying to find a franchise quarterback. You take Baker Mayfield, number 1 overall. You run him out of town to bring in this guy. You pay him $300-something million. This guy craps the bed, and the number 1 pick that you shipped out is now leading a potential contender down in Tampa Bay.
Throwing 4 touchdowns and driving around in a boat in the Gulf of Mexico while you're like futzing around on Lake Erie in 20-degree snow flurries.
Exactly. It is the most like Browns situation ever. Oh. And you know what? Like you saw more than me. You said at the time, this could go down as one of the worst signings in NFL history. Yeah. It is looking like that. Because this is
the Herschel Walker trade. I don't want to say that. That's hyperbolic because the Herschel Walker trade directly led to the Cowboys winning 3 out of 4 Super Bowls.
Right.
I don't think Tampa Bay, so it's not quite directly correlated because obviously Tampa Bay didn't trade for him, but like it is right up there with one of the 5 worst transactions in NFL history.
And it's unfortunate too because this is a good Browns roster. Like they have, they arguably on paper have a top 5 defense. They have some really good offensive weapons. I love their coach, Kevin Stefanski. Like this is a team that really is just being bogged down by awful quarterback play. I mean, they brought in a 40-year-old Joe Flacco last year and looked 5 times better than they do with Deshaun Watson.
I mean, it would be really interesting to see. Everyone talks about what they did with Flacco last year, and the one big difference between Jameis Winston and Flacco. I mean. Flacco was kind of like a protect the ball guy at this point. He's always that way, even when he was younger. I mean, Winston's a let it sling guy. I mean, so I don't know if that will work, but I can't see it being any worse than what the Browns got on Sunday from Deshaun Watson. And not just Sunday, but the last 4 years.
I agree. And just to touch on the Cowboys real quick, I was actually pleasantly surprised by the Cowboys. I didn't think they were going to come out looking the way they did. I thought all the distractions in the offseason, I mean, friggin' Dak Prescott signs the contract the morning of, you know what I mean? Before that game, they waited to the last second with CeeDee Lamb. They lost a couple pieces. Like I expected Dallas to come out super flat. And I don't know whether it was just because Cleveland was that bad or whether Dallas was that good, but Dallas looked pretty good.
Yeah, well, I love me some Dak Prescott, and I think he should be right up there with Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen and all these other guys that are putting up big numbers but haven't won a Super Bowl. I don't know if it's a 4th round draft pick thing or whatever it is. We don't put him in that category. I think he deserves to be there. If you look at his production, he has been a little worse in the playoffs than some of those other names, but not that much worse.
Yeah.
And he's been a good producer. He had a great start. I think the key to their team, Justin, is Brandon Cooks. They need that second target. He had a big touchdown Sunday. If he keeps producing, I think they will be a much better team, and dare I say it, even a contending team. Brandon Cooks has never been that kind of player, and he has an injury history, which is significant. So I don't know if he'll keep it up, but if he somehow could, I think that's really the key to that Dallas team to get that second target. I'm not even going to talk about Commanders, Buccaneers. I mean, we just hit on Baker Mayfield. That's really the only story from that game. I mean, total stud. Looks like he's found a home there. Good for him.
Yep.
And that brings to the Sunday night game, the Rams-Lions. Terrific game.
Yes.
America's team, the Detroit Lions, winning a huge game at home, almost blowing the lead, and then coming from behind and stealing that game, sending it to overtime. Awesome performance by the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, that was, I think, what we all were expecting to see, right? Like, how are they, or at least hoping to see? I mean, how were they going to respond? They had a absolutely crushing loss in the NFC Championship game. I mean, the Rams are obviously out looking for revenge, right? They knocked the Rams out in the playoffs last year. Like, there was every reason for the Lions to potentially come out flat, and they didn't. They looked like a tough, resilient team that was ready to come back this year and compete. And they look. The funny thing is the Lions weren't even at their best. Jared Goff was not at his best.
Nope.
Sam Laporta not at his best. Amon-Ra St. Brown.
You have to give the Rams a little credit for that, though, too. Let's not understate. I think the Rams are a really good team.
I think the Rams are a good team. I think they're extremely well coached. But it's very encouraging when you can say, hey, your top 2 options in your offense, right? Amon-Ra and Laporta had arguably 2 of the worst games of their careers. Jared Goff didn't have a particularly good game either, and you found a way to be gritty and tough it out and win it.
Well, here's the thing. Great teams can win in multiple ways. We've seen that certainly in New England.
Right.
And the one thing about the Detroit team, I mean, they can beat you, especially on offense, multiple different ways. They have that not only a very good passing game, they have a 2-headed monster running back. Yeah. And that was really what they were able to fall back on. I mean, look at that overtime drive. I don't think, did they pass the ball on that drive? It was all Montgomery.
Yes.
The physical pounding. Rams were gassed. They were tired. I mean, that's the hallmark of a great team, a team that's the Swiss Army knife that can pull multiple different ways to beat opponents.
Exactly. And when you have one of the best O-lines in the league, it gives you that option to be versatile.
I mean, let's face it. They're America's team this year. Like, I'm rooting for Detroit.
Me too.
They deserve it. And that was a great start to the year. And we maybe have saved the best for last. And that is the Jets 49ers team. This was like pornography to a Patriots fan. Aaron Rodgers looked like absolute dog poo last night in San Francisco. I think he only threw the ball 21 times. He completed 11 passes. His only touchdown came when the game was out of reach. And forgetting how he played, when I say he looked like dog poo, I just mean like in general, he looks like dog poo. Like he looks like he's 10 years older than he is. He's not engaged. Clearly, he doesn't get along with the coach. They look like crap. The Jets, once again, you talk about Browns doing Brown things. How about Jets doing Jets things?
Jets did Jets things, man. And look, so after that first drive, right, when they put it together, they came down the field and he had that nice touchdown strike to Garrett Wilson. Like they put together a nice little drive there. And I said, oh, okay. Maybe
that was Lazard.
Lazard was at the end.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I'm confused.
The first one that went to Garrett Wilson at the beginning that made it 7-3. That was, I think, the only time the Jets had the lead in the game. And I watched that drive and I said, okay, hey, maybe the Jets are going to be all right. But they proceeded to go the rest of that game just looking completely flat on offense. All I've heard all offseason is how that's one of the best defensive units in football. Not saying they're a bad unit, but, I mean, they got busted open by a hurt San Francisco team. I mean, they
got outclassed last night.
They got outclassed, and San Francisco didn't even have Christian McCaffrey. Jordan Mason ran for 150 yards on that Jets front seven.
Right.
So definitely disappointed. And you know what? This is going to sound crazy as a Patriots fan. I kind of want to see Aaron Rodgers and this Jets team be good. Like I want to see them be good. I want to see them be competitive. Again, I think that's another team where it's good for football if they're a good team winning games. But like it was just so funny to sit back and watch that and just can't help but say to myself, the Jets are gonna Jets. You know?
I mean, you brought this up last week, and I think it was a great point, which is like, look, can a subpar Aaron Rodgers probably get the Jets to 10 or 11 wins? Maybe, but I'm doubting that now. But when you talk about like the goal of that whole thing being Super Bowl contention, and right now that's like not even on the roadmap, and that could change. I mean,
for sure,
we all thought Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay a few years ago, the famous relax year. Yeah. They ended up, I think, in the conference championship that year. It's still early, but it was just great to see them come out and just look like absolute dog food. And I agree with you. The take home from that game, as bad as Rodgers looked, I feel like that's the kind of thing that maybe can change with time.
Right.
Don't discount the way the Jets' run defense got trampled in that game because if you can't stop the run, that's only going to get worse as the year goes on.
Yeah, and another thing too, I'll quickly say is that I fully expected San Fran to come out with the Super Bowl hangover. I thought this was going to be a team that took a step back this year. And even without Christian McCaffrey, even with all the distractions from Brandon Ayuk, even after the devastating Super Bowl loss, like this team came out and they put it together and they looked like they're going to be in contention again.
How about all these poor saps that took the cheese on drafting Christian McCaffrey with the first pick? He'll probably have like 20 touchdowns. I'll look stupid. But, I mean, this guy's got the injury history. I wouldn't be feeling good if I drafted Christian McCaffrey number one. Now, he might heal up and recover, but
look,
hamstrings can be chronic.
I got a notification before this podcast that he's dealing with Achilles tendonitis.
Right.
So that's one of the last things you want to hear for your running back. And this is a guy, too, that I think we both said after being pretty healthy and dominant the last 2 years, given his injury history and the fact that he's another year older, another season gone by with that payload on his body, like eventually it's going to break down. And I think that it could be the year.
So the guy in our league, right, the number one pick, he took Tyreek Hill over Christian McCaffrey. He's looking pretty smart today.
Yes. Yeah, I don't hate that at all.
I'm like, you know what? He was really, really thinking about that because, I mean, I don't know. I personally, I wouldn't touch McCaffrey at anything except for maybe a mid to late round pick.
Yeah. And actually going into my fantasy draft this year, it's funny because I wound up with the number 3 pick. I was fairly happy, but I didn't want the number 1 pick because I said to myself,
same here.
I looked at it and I said, I'm damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't. Because if I take Christian McCaffrey with the number 1 pick, and I've been saying all along, he's due for an injury or for a regression year, I'm going to feel like an idiot. And if I have the number 1 pick and I don't take Christian McCaffrey and he goes out and he's Christian McCaffrey, I'm going to feel like an idiot. So I didn't want to be put in that situation at all, to be honest.
I agree. But I kind of did a little bit. I mean, I got the number 4 pick, right?
Yeah.
Which I think this was one year where I wanted a late pick in the first round.
I agree.
And I didn't know who to take with the number 4 pick. So I took Justin Jefferson because I'm like, well, even if Darnold sucks, I still think Jefferson will produce. Yeah. And we didn't even mention Sam Darnold's name. What a performance from him.
Yeah.
And like that could be a really interesting storyline too, coming down the stretch.
Totally agree. Yeah, I think Sam Darnold is going to surprise a few people, and I think he's good enough for Justin Jefferson to maintain his value for sure.
I mean, that's the way it looked yesterday. It made me feel a lot better. I mean, Jefferson he had a touchdown, and let's face it, the Vikings didn't really need to score a lot of points to beat that hapless Giants team. They kind of got a big lead and were able to sit on it too.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, man. Well, let's talk very quickly about the Patriots-Seahawks game this week, expectations, then we'll wrap it up. I don't know if you want to start or I can start. I mean, this is all I can say about this game. We just hit on it. It's a winnable game. I'm amped for this game. I'll be there. I think it's great to have the possibility of 2-0. I still think Seattle probably wins this game. I thought Seattle looked pretty good against Denver this week. But I wouldn't put anything past. I wouldn't put it past the Patriots to be able to steal a win on Sunday.
I totally agree. Look, if you put a gun to my head, I'm still taking the Seahawks. but I think this is a very winnable game now. I don't think Seattle looked particularly good this past weekend. And look, they're coming on the road. It's the home opener for the Patriots.
Right.
The Patriots got a lot of buzz, a lot of momentum. I think the one thing that I would be most excited for, and I'm very curious to hear your take after you go to the game, is I'm curious to what the vibe and the buzz is going to be in the atmosphere in Gillette. Like, is it going to feel like a rejuvenated, like, the Patriots experience of 5-10 years ago? Like, that's the one thing that I think has been missing from Gillette the last few years, is just that air of excitement that we've all kind of been waiting for to come back. And I'm going to be very curious to see if you get that in week 2.
Well, I'll tell you right now, I can guarantee you there will be a lot of buzz in the stadium on Sunday. Like, the crowd will be excited, and there will be energy, and it will be loud at the start, and it will go from there. But I think based on what we saw in Cincinnati this weekend, and the possibility of 2-0, where, let's face it, by and large, most of Patriots Nation, we were debating whether they were going to win 3 or 4 or 5 games.
Right.
The fact that, they could get off to that coveted 2-0 start, that would be a huge, feather in the cap for this franchise right now, for where they are. And I think the fans will respond to that and really line up behind this team.
Yeah, I do too. I think this is going to be a scrappy game. I can't see it. I can't see it being like a shootout. I feel like
Seattle's defense looked really good.
Seattle's defense didn't look bad. I could see this be very easily being like a 21-17, a 20-14. You know what I mean? I don't. Even lower potentially. I don't think this is going to be a shootout by any means. I think it's going to be a real trench fight between these two sides. And I actually kind of love that, because I think that's the type of game that this Patriots team can thrive in and steal a win out of.
Yeah, and how about Kenneth Walker is a man amongst boys?
Yeah,
that was an impressive performance from him on Sunday. So
it was.
That he gives me a little bit of concern, because he's that kind of guy. I mean, Seattle has some weapons that the Patriots kind of don't have, between DK Metcalf. This is going to be a huge test for Christian Gonzalez. Honestly, I've been skeptical of Gonzalez. He passed his first test, even though it was against a diminished Jamar Chase. He did nothing to make me think that he, he looked like a good cornerback, which I think is a big step for him. So, this is another test for him against a really good DK Metcalf wide receiver. So that will be interesting to see. But I think Seattle has a level of explosiveness and offensive weaponry that the Patriots don't have.
Right.
I think Geno Smith is the better quarterback than Jacoby Brissett by far. I think the Patriots probably have the better defense. They're at home. So I think this will be a low-scoring, close game. As for the 3.5 points, I don't know if you have any thoughts about that. I'm probably fading it, because I don't know. I don't want to bet against the Patriots, but I don't know if it feels like quite enough points to make me feel like I want to take it. Your thoughts? Anything on that?
I think it's a pretty good line. I mean, I don't have any strong feelings yet either way. I don't know. I'm going to have to think on that one. I wouldn't, it's not a line that I would jump at and be like, oh, I got to get all over this right now. I'm going to wait to see what happens the rest of the week.
I mean, they give you that 3 and a hook. I feel like they're baiting you to just take it and say, oh, it's a field goal game, and, it'll be close. And that almost makes me a little worried what Vegas
Agreed.
thinks when they throw that hook in there. But anyways, all right, well, that's all the time we have. You got any final thoughts, Justin, on this opening week? Pats, Bengals games, anything across the league?
You know what? I'm just happy to be back. I gotta say, it's definitely an exciting season so far, like we mentioned at the beginning, and there's a lot of good storylines to keep watching that are going to keep building in week 2. So, and obviously we're going to be covering
Thursday night game this week, Miami Buffalo. Yes. It's a great game, relevant to the Patriots for sure.
Exactly. There is a very realistic possibility that the Patriots, well, actually, it would be impossible for them to wind up in first after week 2, but they could
sole possession. Unless there was a tie.
Right. But it's a very real possibility that the Patriots could be in the top of the AFC East after this weekend.
Well, look, it's only been 1 week, but the Patriots are in first place. The Jets are in last place, and that sounds pretty good. And let's hope they can push it to 2-0 and keep this season alive and show something. So we'll look forward to it, and we'll definitely be recording next week to discuss what will undoubtedly be I think another terrific week of NFL action. I want to thank everyone that took the time to listen to the Ultimate Patriots / Dr. Football podcast. We will be back next week. Have a great week, everyone.